AI is everywhere these days. It's in our phones, our cars, pretty much everything. And with every single breakthrough, you kind of have to wonder, are there any real limits to what it can do? For decades, you've had experts drawing these lines in the sand, saying AI will never do this. Well, today, we're going to dig into that history of predictions and see why, well, so many of them just didn't hold up.
Yeah, this idea has been around forever, really. It's this constant thing you hear. AI is never going to be able to. And you can fill in the blank with almost anything, right? Play chess, get a joke, create real art, drive a car, the list goes on. It's a statement I bet we've all heard and maybe even thought ourselves at some point.
So, what do all those predictions have in common? Well, here's the kicker. Almost all of them turned out to be wrong. I mean, the growth we've seen in just the last few years has been absolutely explosive. AI has jumped out of the research lab and straight into our lives, doing the very things people swore were impossible. It's become pretty clear. Time and time again, betting against AI has been a losing game.
Okay, but before we can really get into the limits of AI's intelligence, we kind of need a way to think about what intelligence even is. Like, how do you go from just a bunch of random facts to, real insight? Turns out there's a classic model that's super helpful for this. And this is it, the DIKW pyramid. It's a fantastic way to picture how intelligence is built. So at the bottom, you've got data, just raw, random facts. Let's say we have the numbers 10, 6, 42, and 8. On their own, they mean nothing. But then you add context. Okay, these are the ages of people in a room. Now, boom, you have information. Then you interpret it. Most of these people are under 21. That's knowledge. And the final step? Applying that knowledge. Hey, let's play some games that are actually fun for this age group. And that is wisdom. So, for the longest time, computers were amazing at the bottom two layers, right? Storing data, organizing information. But the massive leap forward for AI was when it started to operate at that knowledge level, actually making interpretations and seeing connections. The real prize, though? That's the top of the pyramid. True wisdom, genuine judgment. That's still the ultimate goal. All right, so now that we have that framework in our heads, let's take a look back. Let's talk about some of those supposedly impossible limits that AI has just completely shattered. I mean, these are things that really not that long ago felt like total science fiction. First on the list, complex reasoning. For years, everybody just assumed a machine could never, ever beat a human grandmaster at chess. I mean, chess was seen as this pinnacle of deep, intuitive human strategy. And then 1997 happened. IBM's Deep Blue goes and defeats Garry Kasparov, the world champ. And just like that, it proved AI could handle mind-boggling logical complexity. That barrier wasn't just cracked, it was completely smashed to pieces. Okay, so what was next? How about understanding nuanced human language? Think about it. Our speech is just packed with weird stuff. Idioms, puns, sarcasm, jokes. And then, in 2011, IBM's Watson steps up and wins on Jeopardy, a game that's basically built on clever, tricky wordplay. Watson had to get the meaning behind the words, not just recognize the words themselves. A huge, huge step. All right, then there's the big one, creativity. For the longest time, the idea that a machine could create genuinely new art or music, it just sounded ridiculous. But look at today's generative AI. It's doing exactly that. And you'll hear people say, oh, it's just remixing what it's learned. And to that, I'd say, well, how is that any different from a human artist? Every painter, every musician, they all have influences that shape their new work, right? And how about this one? Real-time perception and action. A robot that can see the world, understand what's happening, and act on it. That was the stuff of movies. But think about a self-driving car. That's exactly what it is. It's a robot perceiving a super complex environment, predicting what other cars and people will do, and making thousands of decisions every single second. Another one of those impossible limits that is now just our reality. So yeah, we've seen a lot of these so-called limits just fall by the wayside. But that absolutely does not mean the work is done, not even close. So let's shift gears and talk about the major challenges that researchers are wrestling with right now. These are today's hard problems. One of the absolute biggest challenges is emotional intelligence, EQ. I mean, modern chatbots can be spooky good at simulating empathy, right? At understanding your mood. Now, does the AI actually feel anything? Almost certainly not. But the fact that it can create such a convincing appearance of understanding, that's a massive step forward, even if genuine, real EQ is still the goal.
And this brings us to probably the most talked about problem with AI today, the hallucination. This is basically when an AI, which is really just a superpowered prediction machine, just confidently makes something up. The crazy thing is, when it's right, it's shockingly right. But when it gets something wrong, it can be just as shockingly and confidently wrong. But here's the good news. This is not some unsolvable mystery. People are already developing some really powerful ways to fight these hallucinations. Take something called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. The whole idea is to ground the AI in reality. So instead of just making it answer from its own massive memory, it first has to go look up the facts from a trusted source, and then it generates its answer based on that. It's kind of like giving the AI an open book test instead of a closed book one. It's a game changer. Okay, so we've looked at the past, we've talked about the present, now let's look ahead to the future. We're talking about the really long-term, almost philosophical challenges. These are the next great frontiers for AI. And these challenges are, well, they're immense. We're talking about the really big stuff. Things like artificial general intelligence, or AGI. That's an AI that can think and reason just as broadly as a human can. We're talking about actual self-awareness and consciousness, which honestly is as much a question for philosophers as it is for programmers. Then you've got true common sense, deep emotions like joy and loss, and a huge practical problem, just making these things sustainable and not using up all the world's energy. So when you see all this, all the power, all the challenges, it's super easy to wonder, okay, so where do we humans fit into all of this? And the best way to think about it isn't as a competition, it's a partnership. But we have to be clear about what our role in that partnership is.
Really, the best way to frame it is like a division of labor. Our job as humans is to figure out the what and the why. What do we want to accomplish? Why is it important? What's the mission? AI's job is to execute the how. Once we give it the destination, it's brilliant at figuring out the fastest, the most efficient, the most optimized way to get us there.
When you boil it all down, we're still in the driver's seat. We provide the purpose, we set the course. AI is this unbelievably powerful tool, maybe the most powerful tool humanity has ever created, that helps us achieve our goals way more effectively than we ever could on our own.
And that brings us right back to the very beginning. When you look at the history, when you see all the milestones that have fallen, the incredible progress we're making right now, and what's on the horizon, one thing becomes crystal clear. My advice to you, don't bet against AI. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Right now, the challenges on that list, things like AGI, common sense, true wisdom, they all seem, well, they seem huge, impossible maybe. But hey, so did beating a chess grandmaster or creating art from scratch. So based on the history we've just walked through, which one of these final frontiers do you think is going to be the next one to fall?